yourself have said previously that Putin cannot be trusted in negotiations. That was the point that President Zelensky was ultimately making during that conversation, is that there cannot be an agreement without security guarantees, because he was talking about all the ceasefire agreements before, or agreements that Putin has just blown past. I mean, do you still feel that way, that Putin cannot be trusted in these negotiations?
Well, I was there yesterday when the president said in front of the media that our approach is going to be trust but verify. President Trump's made deals his entire life. He's not going to get suckered into some deal that's not a real deal. We all understand this. We understand it on our end for certain. And so the goal here is to get to a place we have to explore whether peace is possible. I've said this repeatedly. I don't know. I think it is, based on what they've said so far, but we have to explore that.
So basically, he is not willing to say that Putin cannot be trusted. That's not what he will say ever. And he will always start by praising his boss. His boss is the smartest cookie in the world. And then he will tell us something else.
How else is this war going to end? I ask people, what is the European plan to end this war? I can tell you what one foreign minister told me, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I can tell you what one of them told me, and that is that the war goes on for another year, and at that point, Russia will feel so weakened that they'll beg for a peace. That's another year of killing, another year of dying, another year of destruction, and by the way, not a very realistic plan in my point of view. So if there's a chance of peace, even if it's a 1% chance, that needs to be explored, and that's what President Trump is trying to do here.
No, that's not what President Trump is trying to do here. He just blew up the whole thing. There could have been a ceasefire. There could have been some negotiation. But Donald Trump is coming across as someone who doesn't really care much about peace in the real sense. He cares about his Nobel Peace Prize. And I think that foreign head of states, they realize it, especially Zelensky. And also Putin, that this guy, Donald Trump, is just up for a Nobel Peace Prize. Putin is never going to stop this war until all his objectives are met.
President Trump said just when he was leaving the White House after that meeting that he doesn't think President Zelensky wants peace. But isn't that why the Ukrainian leader was in the Oval Office for that meeting today?
Well, he was in the Oval Office to sign a minerals rights deal. That's what he was in the Oval Office to sign today. But again, when you have comments that deliberately appear to be after having discussed this repeatedly, deliberately appear to be geared towards making the argument that peace is not possible. Again, he turns to the vice president. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Almost as if to say, these people, you can't deal with them. You can't have any negotiations with Putin because he can't be trusted, and you're just wasting your time on negotiations. Well, he's basically undermining everything the president has told him he's trying to do. Look, there's no need for that. You start to suspect, does he really want an end to this war? Does he just think that, we have to do whatever he says and give him anything he wants without any end game? That was the Biden strategy. We were funding a stalemate. We were funding a meat grinder. And unfortunately, for the Ukrainians, the Russians have more meat to grind, and they don't care about human life. We've seen it, human waves, the North Koreans, etc. And so this is a very complex thing. It's very delicate. It's very costly. It's very bloody. It needs to be brought to an end, but it isn't going to be brought to an end with public pronouncements and maximalist demands in the public.
No, it cannot be brought to an end. This is not up to you. And all Putin is doing is playing with Donald Trump. He's making him do whatever he wants. As I said before, maybe Putin has some dirty laundry of Donald Trump from Epstein's files. Donald Trump is pandering to Putin's need. That's all he's doing. He's not stopping this war. He knows he cannot do this. It's just all propaganda for Donald Trump.
Real diplomacy. The vice president was right.
When you say they don't care about life, are you talking about the Russians or the Ukrainians?
Well, the Russians, they're conscripting by the hundreds of thousands. They brought in North Korean troops that were slaughtered in Kursk, and they keep going because they got more people. That's the other fact. Look, and it's, again, we go back to the same point. I'm not going to fall into this trap of the who's bad and who's evil. People can make those conclusions. People have seen how this narrative is played out and where we are today and how this all started and so forth. The point now is it has to end. And the way it ends is you get people to a negotiating table, and the president, who's the ultimate deal maker, knows you don't get people to a negotiating table when you're calling them names and you're accusing them of things, because at the end of the day, this is not a political campaign. Okay, this is high-stakes international diplomacy and an effort to bring about an end to a very, very dangerous war.
So for Marco Rubio, it's always about, your rhetoric is not helping. Who is the guilty guy? Who is the good guy? Of course it matters who is the guilty guy, who is the good guy. But he is not going to be saying that. that Putin is a war criminal, or that Putin did something wrong, or that Putin cannot be trusted. None of those things he will say at all. Instead, when you ask him, what do you think about this of Putin, he will say, we don't have time to discuss all of this. The point here is we need to stop this war. But then again, he doesn't stop the war. He cannot. Because if you think that Putin is just as good as Zelensky, then you cannot solve this problem. You have to force the other leader, who is the bad actor, and tell him that, hey, this is something unfair. You need to behave yourself. We are here to help you out with this situation. It's going to benefit all of us, the whole world. I think that's how the negotiation should take place. If you say, oh, Putin, you're right, and then you go to Ukraine, you say, oh, you're right too, but then you don't stop the war, you're not able to do so. You cannot. This just simply doesn't make any sense.
Have said before that you believe Putin is a war criminal, that is a widely accepted fact. You've called him a butcher, and you've said that as a Secretary of State, you do believe it's important for someone with such global influence as you have to speak with that kind of moral clarity.
Yeah, and at this moment, as Secretary of State, my job working for the president is to deliver peace, to end this conflict and end this war. Ultimately, that is the job of the State Department. The State Department doesn't fight wars, it ends them. It tries to end them. And that's usually, by the way, celebrated. I mean, throughout history, I've watched presidents that bring about an end to wars and conflicts, and people celebrate that. They applaud it. I think we should be very proud and happy that we have a president whose prime objective is not to get into wars, but to prevent wars and to get out of wars. That is a very noble, laudable goal. Everyone should be applauding it, and he should be given the space to do that, not undermined by demands that he call Putin names or that we say things that impede the ability to conduct real diplomacy, as the vice president said today.
Yeah, well, again, he's just saying the same thing over and over again, that Donald Trump is going to bring an end to this war. He cannot. And I mean, Donald Trump calls names for so many head of states. He said that about North Korean leader. He said that about Iranian leaders too. But he never calls Putin with names. And the reason we know that, because Putin has Epstein's files.
To follow up on what you just said a moment ago, are you saying that you have doubts that President Zelensky wants this war to come to an end?
What I have doubts about is whether he's willing to say and do the things that we need in order to get a negotiation. Again, you guys, this has been going on for 10 days. And, to see things in the press saying we're not coordinating with the Ukrainians, that's absolutely false. Over the last 10 days, the Ukrainians have met with the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States, had a phone call with President Trump, and he was in the Oval Office today. I've talked to the foreign minister of Ukraine 3 times in the last 10 days. The argument that we're not engaging, but yet you keep reading these press accounts about, oh, well, they're leaving us out. We're not involved. We're not engaged. None of these things are true, and it continues. So all that led up to today in a deep sense of frustration. And my hope is that this all can be reset and maturity can kick in and some pragmatism, because this war tonight, people will die in Ukraine. Tonight, people will die in this conflict. We're trying to bring an end to this conflict, which is unsustainable. It's an unsustainable, bloody war that has to come to an end. And right now, the only leader in the world that can even have a chance of bringing about an end to this is named President Donald Trump.
If you take a look at his rhetoric against Iran is very harsh. They're religious zealot, they're lunatics, they're this, they're that. And he never talks about peace. What about the people of Iran? What about those school children, 170 got killed? He never talks about them. He doesn't show any sympathy. But hey, in Russia-Ukraine war, a lot of people are dying. We need to stop this bloodshed. I mean, this is an open and blatant hypocrisy that we are seeing right in front of us. Subscribe for more videos, guys. See you in the next one.